The story begins with a billionaire named Richard, a man known for his immense wealth, his powerful empire, and his reputation as a shrewd businessman. To the outside world, Richard had everything a person could ever desire: luxury cars, sprawling mansions, private jets, and an endless fortune. But deep inside, Richard had grown weary of the people around him. He had seen too many fake smiles, too many people who wanted to be near him only for his wealth, and too few who truly cared about his heart. Speech balloon. Please leave your thoughts and analysis requests in the comments section. Sparkles. Thumbs up, likes and bell subscribes will help us make our work even more exciting. Rainbow sparkling heart. Your support is our greatest strength. Cherry blossom wave glowing star. One day, as Richard sat in his luxurious penthouse overlooking the city, he decided to conduct a test, something that would reveal the true nature of those closest to him. For years, he had been surrounded by women who admired him, or at least pretended to. Some were elegant, some were cunning, but very few were genuine. Richard wanted to find out if there was anyone who valued him for who he was, not for what he owned. His idea was simple yet daring. He would hand over his platinum credit card, one with no spending limit, to 3 women who were in his life. 2 of them were women who had been courting his attention, glamorous ladies who always dressed in the finest clothes and spoke sweet words. The 3rd was someone far less obvious: his maid, Anna. Anna had worked for Richard for almost 5 years. She was quiet, humble, and efficient. She never asked for more than her modest salary, never complained, and never tried to get closer to him beyond her professional duties. But Richard had noticed her kindness, how she took extra care when preparing his meals, how she left encouraging notes for the staff, and how she treated everyone, regardless of status, with dignity. When Richard presented the challenge, the women were shocked. He told them, "Take this card. Spend whatever you want for a single day. At the end, return it to me. What you choose will reveal who you truly are." The women stared at him in disbelief. Was this a trap, or was it the opportunity of a lifetime? The first woman, Cassandra, immediately smiled with excitement. She had long dreamed of flaunting Richard's wealth and buying herself luxuries that would make her the envy of her social circle. Without hesitation, she snatched the card and declared that she would make the most of it. Her eyes glimmered with greed, and Richard knew exactly what was running through her mind. The second woman, Victoria, was more subtle. She smiled sweetly and promised Richard that she would only spend on things of meaning. But behind her charming smile, Richard could sense her calculating nature. She had always been strategic, never showing her intentions until the perfect moment. He suspected she would use the card not just for herself, but for her own advantage. Then there was Anna, the maid. She stood silently, holding the card as if it weighed 100 pounds. She didn't say much. She simply nodded and thanked him softly, her hands trembling. Richard noticed the difference. While the other 2 women were almost celebrating, Anna seemed nervous, almost uncomfortable, as if she didn't belong in this test at all. The next day, Cassandra was the first to return. She strutted into the penthouse carrying bags upon bags from luxury stores. Designer dresses, diamond jewelry, the latest handbags, and the most expensive perfume, all stuffed into glossy shopping bags. She laughed proudly as she displayed her purchases. "Richard, I thought of you while shopping," she lied. "Don't I look stunning in these new clothes?" Richard said nothing, but inside he felt a pang of disappointment. Later, that afternoon, Victoria arrived. Her purchases were more clever. She had bought expensive wine, rare art pieces, and gifts for influential people. She explained to Richard that she was investing in relationships and helping his reputation grow. "See," she said, "I'm not just buying for myself, I'm buying for our future." But Richard knew she wasn't thinking of their future. She was thinking of her own social climbing. Finally, late in the evening, Anna returned. She carried no luxury bags, no glamorous gifts, no diamond-studded boxes. Instead, She had only 2 paper bags in her hands. Richard raised an eyebrow, curious about what she could possibly have chosen. She set the bags down quietly on the table, her eyes lowered. Richard opened the first bag. Inside were groceries. Basic food items, rice, vegetables, bread, and milk. Confused, Richard asked, "Why would you spend on this when you had the whole world at your fingertips?" Anna smiled gently and replied, "Sir, I know the staff downstairs often skips meals because they can't afford enough. I thought they deserved a good dinner tonight. I used part of the money to make sure they had something warm to eat." Stunned, Richard opened the second bag. Inside was a small, neatly wrapped box. When he unwrapped it, he found a photo frame. Inside the frame was a picture of his late parents, restored and printed beautifully from an old, faded photograph that had been tucked away in the library. Richard's heart sank. He hadn't seen that photo in years. His eyes watered as he looked at Anna. How did you find this?" he asked, his voice breaking. Anna explained softly, "I remembered you once mentioned missing your parents. I thought maybe this would bring you some comfort. It wasn't expensive, but I thought it mattered more than anything money could buy." For the first time in years, Richard was speechless. While the other 2 women had rushed to spend on themselves, Anna had thought of others. She had used his limitless credit card not to satisfy greed, but to show kindness and thoughtfulness. That simple gift, a frame with his parents' picture, was worth more to him than all the diamonds and luxury goods in the world. Richard realized in that moment that money could buy everything except sincerity. And Anna, his quiet maid, had given him the one thing he had been searching for all along: genuine care. The 2 other women watched in silence as Richard's expression changed. They had expected him to be impressed with their flashy choices, but instead, he turned to them with disappointment. He gently took back the credit card from Cassandra and Victoria, his face firm but calm. "You have shown me who you truly are," Richard said. "And now I see the difference between those who want my wealth and those who value my heart." Cassandra tried to argue, claiming she bought things to look good for him. Victoria tried to justify her purchases as investments. But Richard didn't listen. His decision was already made. Turning to Anna, Richard's tone softened. "You didn't just spend money. You gave meaning. You reminded me of what really matters." Anna blushed, unsure of what to say. She never expected her actions to touch him so deeply. In the days that followed, Richard could not stop thinking about the maid's humility and kindness. He realized how blind he had been all these years, chasing people who only saw him as a walking bank account. But Anna had seen him as a human being, with a heart, with memories, and with pain. The billionaire who once thought wealth could buy loyalty discovered something far more valuable. True compassion cannot be purchased. It must be given freely, from the heart. And so, the test that started with a simple credit card ended with Richard's most important lesson. Sometimes the ones who care the most are the ones who expect the least. Richard was not an ordinary man. Born into wealth, he had inherited his father's empire and doubled it with his own brilliance. By the age of 45, he was one of the most powerful billionaires in the country. Yet, despite all his success, Richard often found himself feeling deeply alone. He lived in a grand mansion, filled with staff, luxury, and endless possessions, but he knew too well that people came close to him for his fortune, not his character. Every smile, every handshake, every gesture, he could almost feel the weight of hidden intentions behind them. It was this loneliness that made him devise a strange test. He wanted to know if there was even one person near him who valued him as a human being, not as a source of endless wealth. The plan he came up with was bold, almost absurd, but perfectly suited for his purpose. Richard decided to hand over his limitless credit card to 3 women who were currently part of his life. He would ask them to spend freely for one day, and what they chose would reveal their true hearts. The first 2 women were glamorous, attractive, and had been pursuing him romantically for months. Cassandra was a socialite, always chasing parties and status. Victoria was more cunning, always speaking of the future, but always with her eyes fixed on power. The third woman, however, was Anna, his maid. She was humble, soft-spoken, and invisible to most people in the house. For years she had cleaned his rooms, served his meals, and quietly carried out her duties without ever asking for more. Richard included her in the test almost as a curiosity. When he announced the challenge, Cassandra laughed with excitement. "Richard, you'll regret this. I'll look so dazzling tomorrow you won't be able to take your eyes off me," she teased, clutching the card like it was a crown jewel. Victoria smiled more modestly, but her eyes betrayed her ambition. "You'll see, Richard. I'll spend wisely, in a way that benefits us both," she promised, her voice smooth and confident. Anna, in contrast, looked almost frightened when the card was placed in her hand. She bowed slightly and whispered, "Thank you, sir, I'll do my best." Unlike the others, she didn't grin or flaunt. She simply walked away quietly, her steps hesitant. The next day came. Cassandra returned first, her arms filled with luxury bags. She twirled around, showing off her diamond earrings and new designer gown. "Look at me, Richard. I made sure to pick the very best, because you deserve a woman who shines just as brightly." Richard watched silently, his heart sinking. Victoria arrived later with a truck full of items, art pieces, imported wine, limited edition decor. She explained each item with a cunning smile. "These are not just gifts, Richard. They're investments. With these, we can impress politicians, celebrities, and expand your circle of influence." Richard nodded, but inside he felt empty. Hours passed before Anna returned. Unlike the others, she carried no glamorous bags, no expensive treasures. She had only 2 small paper bags in her hands. The other women smirked, certain that she had failed the test. Richard leaned forward. "What did you bring?" he asked gently. From the first bag, Anna pulled out basic groceries, bread, vegetables, rice, and milk. Cassandra laughed mockingly. "Groceries? With that card? Are you serious?" But Anna looked Richard in the eyes and explained softly, "I know the staff downstairs often skip meals because they send money to their families. I wanted to make sure they had enough to eat today. They worked so hard, but rarely get recognized." The room fell silent. Even Richard was taken aback. He hadn't expected such an answer. Then Anna handed him the second bag. Inside was a simple, neatly wrapped box. Richard unwrapped it slowly and gasped when he saw what was inside. A restored photograph of his late parents in a beautiful frame. His hands shook as he touched it, memories flooding back. How did you find this?" Richard whispered, his voice breaking. Anna replied gently, "I found an old, faded photo in the library. You once mentioned how much you missed them. I had it restored and framed. It wasn't expensive, but I thought it might bring you comfort." For the first time in years, Richard felt tears welling in his eyes. This gift, so simple yet so meaningful, broke down the walls around his heart. No luxury car, no diamond ring, no fine wine could compare to the thoughtfulness behind Anna's gesture. Cassandra scoffed. "That's ridiculous. A cheap picture frame. Really? Richard, don't be fooled." But Richard didn't even glance at her. Victoria tried to argue. "Richard, sentiment is fine, but what I bought actually benefits you in society. Think of the connections." Yet her words sounded hollow compared to the quiet sincerity of Anna. Richard stood up slowly and faced them all. His expression was calm, but his voice carried authority. "You have all shown me who you truly are. Cassandra, your purchases reveal only vanity. Victoria, yours reveal ambition. But Anna, you showed me kindness, not greed. Compassion, not calculation." The 2 women shifted uncomfortably, realizing they had failed. Anna lowered her gaze, not seeking praise, but Richard walked over and gently lifted her chin. "You reminded me of something I had forgotten, what truly matters." That night, Richard joined the staff for dinner downstairs for the first time in years. He watched them eat the food Anna had bought, laughing and enjoying a rare feast. For once, his house felt alive with genuine happiness, not the shallow noise of high society guests. Cassandra soon disappeared from his life, bitter that her beauty hadn't won. Victoria left as well, chasing another wealthy man who would indulge her schemes. But Anna stayed, not out of ambition, but because she had nowhere else to be. Over the weeks, Richard found himself seeking her company more often. He would ask her opinion on small things, and she would always answer with honesty and humility. Sometimes they would sit in silence, just sharing a cup of tea, and for Richard, that silence felt more comforting than any lavish party. One evening, Richard finally admitted, "Anna, I gave you that card expecting nothing. But what you did with it, it broke me. Not in pain, but in realization. I've been surrounded by people, but none cared for me the way you did." Anna smiled faintly. "Sir, you've given so much to others, but I thought maybe you needed something money can't buy: remembrance, warmth, family." Richard was moved beyond words. The man who could buy anything realized that the greatest treasures were not things, but feelings. He decided to promote Anna, no longer just a maid, but a trusted companion in his household. Slowly, their bond deepened, built not on wealth but on sincerity. Whenever Richard looked at the framed photograph of his parents, he remembered the lesson Anna had given him, that money can reveal people's hearts, but it can never buy love. And so, the billionaire who once tested others with his credit card discovered the true wealth hidden in kindness.